All right, so we are moving on to session 3 of this lesson. And this time we are talking about rotations in the coordinate plane. And just like translations and reflections, we're going to actually perform them, and then we're going to just represent them mathematically. Now, rotations to me are kind of the most difficult because you kind of just have to memorize what happens with the coordinates. There's kind of no real easy way to do it unless you're going to use tracing paper or patty paper. And I can't show you patty paper on this. So I'm just going to show you the pattern. And as you practice, the more you use it, it will become second nature to you, I hope. So we've got Jamal. He's got triangle PQR. He's going to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin to form the image PQR prime. And they want to know what are the coordinates of the image. So when you're doing rotations, you have to write out all of your points. So for PQR, we need to find their coordinates. It's in quadrant 4. The XY pattern there is a positive X and a negative Y. That's just to help us to check to make sure the points we write make sense. P is at 1, -1. Q is at 3, -2. And R is at 2, -4. Now, I'm just going to give you the rule for 90 degree and 270 degree rotations. The first thing that you need to understand is that the X and the Y values switch. They switch. So for P prime, Q prime, R prime, we're going 90 degrees counterclockwise. So from quadrant 4, we're going up to quadrant 1. So that means we have a positive X and a positive Y. Now, when I say the values switch, I mean X, well, the first one, it doesn't really help because they're both 1. We're not going to look at the signs yet, but X is 1, Y is 1. We're going to switch that. But for this one, it stays the same. So that might not make sense to you yet. But for Q, we have 3, 2. Don't worry about the positives or negatives yet. So it's going to be 2, 3. For R, we have 2, 4. We're going to switch it so that it's 4, 2. So that's the first thing you do. You just switch the X's and Y's. You do not worry about anything being positive or negative. Don't add any negatives, okay? So how do I know if it's positive or negative? Well, it really just depends on the quadrant. So since we are rotating up to quadrant 1, everything's going to be positive. So we're going to leave it alone. So the second step is the quadrant determines positive or negative. I used to say determines the sign, but if you don't know what that means, I think this is a little bit more clear. So when I'm doing a rotation, if it's 90 degrees or 270 degrees, the first thing I'm going to do is write out all of my ordered pairs for the pre-image. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my X values and my Y values. And then finally, I'm going to look to see what quadrant does it end up in. That will tell me what is positive and what is negative. So if I had landed in quadrant 2, my X's would have been negative and my Y's would have been positive. But because we landed in quadrant 1, everything is positive. So that's kind of the rule, the pattern that you follow for 90 degree and 270 degree rotations.